In the ancient city of Kultepe in what is now Turkey, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old ceramic rattle. It is believed to be one of the oldest toys to be discovered. On the Italian island of Pantelleria, a 4,000-year-old stone doll head and miniature furniture was also found in 2004. Toys also have been found in the pyramids of Egypt, adding to the list of ancient toys. In Europe, Nuremberg, Germany has a 600-year tradition of making toys. Making dolls at the end of the 14th century through the Industrial Age. Printing, using lithography on paper and tin to make puzzles and tin toys. In the US, the Philadelphia Tin Toy Manufactory opened in 1838, advertising imported toys from Germany and France.
There were toys, but they were so expensive because they were all handmade. Only the wealthiest families in the United States could afford to buy toys for their children. And the rest of the children, they made do with a rock or a discarded piece of rope or a stick. And there's a lot of fun you can have with those things, but not quite the same as having toys.
That's one of the hallmarks of Akron's place in the toy industry. When you look at Antiques Roadshow, and there are these wonderful tin toys and wooden toys, they were expensive. Ordinary children didn't afford tin toys. But one of the hallmarks of Akron's positions in the toy industry was that they made toys that children could actually afford.
They mass-produced the world's first toy here. These were the first toys that were available for children, and they could buy it with their own money. If they had a penny, they could buy a toy. And that was a significant change into the lives of children.
Marbles have been entertaining kids for centuries. In the 1800s, some children were lucky enough to buy a piece of candy with their own money, but most couldn't afford a toy. That all changed in 1884 when a newspaper man named Samuel Dyke started a marble factory on the site of an old lumberyard that had once been Lock 3 of Ohio's canal system. Samuel Dyke invented and patented the first device to mass produce a toy, a clay marble. And it's relatively simple.
This is it. It's a piece of plaster with grooves in it. And the concept here is that you put a small billet of clay into each groove, and then you take a board that's covered in sackcloth, and you roll it over 1, 2, 3, and there you've got a dozen marbles. Now, this size is made to produce a 3/4 inch shooter. But to make a small target marble, the grooves would be much thinner. You could make up to 1,000 marbles an hour using this device. Before this, all marbles were made one at a time by hand, like this. And we've all done this. It's not easy to do. And it took a lot of practice to get good at it. But good at it means you could probably make 30 in an hour.
Because of this mass increase in production, the price dropped so low that you could buy a whole handful of marbles for just 1 penny.
And that made a huge difference in the lives of children, who for the very first time in world history could have a toy. All of them, everybody who could afford to get a penny could afford a toy.
Sam Dyke's invention allowed his factory to turn out 1 million marbles a day. It also made him very wealthy. And several years after he started his marble factory, the first of 34 other marble factories, inspired by his success, began to open up business in the greater Akron area.
And they made all types and styles of marbles, from earthenware, stoneware, handmade glass, hand-gathered, machine-made glass, fully automated machine-made glass marbles. They also made stone marbles, Akron Stone Marble Company.
The competition wouldn't necessarily impact Sam Dyke financially, but it made many other types of marbles available. The original clay marble became known as commies by the kids who loved playing with them because they were the most common of all of the varieties. But according to Akron historian Dave Lieberth, in the beginning there was only one material responsible for the Akron toy boom.
And the marble industry was an outgrowth of Akron's position in the world as one of the major producers of clay products. So we progressed from making marbles out of clay to marbles out of glass.
The marble market grew at a phenomenal rate. And there was no way for one factory or even a dozen factories to be able to fulfill all the wants for the marbles at that price especially. So with others making marbles, Sam Dyke decided that he needed to do something, basically instill prestige into his company.
So he brought a very famous glassmaster to Akron named James Harvey Layton.
They called him Harry. Harry Layton was third-generation American glassmaster. His grandfather had opened the Cambridge Glass Factory in Massachusetts, which is renowned as the first major glass factory in the United States. So Harry Layton comes to Akron, is Sam Dyke's guest. He shows him around, explains to him, we need glass marbles. They make glass marbles in Germany. They're very expensive. What can you do?
So Harry Layton came up with a hand tool that allowed glass marbles to be made much faster than they were manufactured in Germany, in turn producing the first American glass marbles.
They're beautiful. They were also rather expensive and intended only for the wealthiest families. A handmade glass marble cost a nickel in the 1890s, which was a lot of money. Seeing that a common wage back then was 25 cents for 10 hours.
The marbles were so beautiful and the process was so unique that there were a lot of people who wanted to invest in Harry Layton's marble factories.
And he got requests to do this from people in Navarre, Ohio, Medina, Ohio, Barberton, Ohio, Steubenville, Ohio, and he would go into these cities, he'd build a factory, he would train a workforce.
The businesses didn't last very long, but the marbles they produced were so treasured and well taken care of by their owners, they're still around today. Harry eventually even teamed up with a local drop-forged steel expert who was a mechanical engineer, and together they developed a process that creates a sphere.
You take a plastic material and you cause it to spin with a constantly changing axis, and right away it causes a sphere. He built a number of different machines for you to make glass marbles, but then also to manufacture ball bearings. He could have been making chocolates and soap with his process too. Whatever the material, it would cause it to become spherical. And this was very important because, especially with the ball bearings, that allowed Mr. Ford to make automobiles, the Wright brothers to fly.
Such monumental pieces of history that all began with child's play.
In the 1920s, the Scripps Howard Syndicate decided that they would develop a newspaper promotion, and they introduced the concept of a national marbles tournament. There were about 25 in all. Each of those cities held a marbles tournament. And the way it worked is that it started with a school tournament. And the winner of a school tournament then went on to play the winners of about 7 or 8 other school tournaments. And the winners would eventually end up playing for the title of the city marble champion.
The marble playing competitors could eventually work their way up to the National Marble Tournament, which was the first children's organized sporting event in the United States. And both boys and girls competed.
There was a little boy in Akron named Al Huey, and he won his school marbles tournament, went on to win the regional tournament, went on to win the Akron District Marbles Tournament, and represented the city at the Nationals.
He says a little girl named Gladys gave Al Huey a run for his money, but Al won.
Al Huey won the National Marbles Tournament. They had a parade, the biggest parade that there's ever been. It stretched from downtown Akron all the way to his home in Kenmore. And then that next weekend, every theater in the United States showed a film clip the news of Al Huey winning the National Marbles Tournament in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And he was one of the most celebrated kids in the United States. And he went on to have a very good and long life here in Akron.
In the spring, we'd all dig out into our marbles. If you didn't have any, you'd see if you could pawn a nickel or dime off of somebody and get some marbles.
The smooth, round shape. The sometimes colorful and intricate design. The small size perfect for a child's pocket and hands are what make these simple toys intriguing for kids and collectors alike.
Oh yeah, I played a lot. I had the knees wore out of my pants, and I had a callus on my thumb where I shot. Actually, my thumbnail at one time got so thin it was sore, and I had to quit shooting marbles for a while because my finger was so sore. But yeah, I really loved it.
Ed Schubert fondly remembers waiting for the weather to break as a kid so he could get out and play.
It's a knee pad.
We had the schoolyard, we had dirt there that was smooth, we could play. You'd make a circle, guys would throw their marbles in the circle, and we'd just shoot it.
Years later, he not only treasures those memories, but now as a collector, he also appreciates the art and beauty that these tiny pieces of history hold.
We've got a box of Peltier feathered slags, and they're just absolutely beautiful.
These are called horizontal swirls. They're real unusual. There's no other marble in the world like them.
There were gentlemen on the other side of town looking for new uses for rubber. And when they saw what Sam Dyke was doing at his marble factory in Akron, they thought, you know, if we could mass produce something out of rubber that kids liked, we too could be fabulously wealthy.
But at the same time, as the rubber industry advanced, the major companies, Goodyear, Goodrich, and Firestone, also on occasion made toys for children. The B.F. Goodrich Company certainly did. And they made small hard rubber dolls and the like.
In total, there have been almost 200 toy companies in the greater Akron area, most making rubber toys.
All the major rubber companies, Firestone, Goodyear, Goodrich, they all had a toy department. They made rubber balls and basketballs and balloons. There's still major toy companies in the greater Akron area today. Little Tyke, Step 2, Maple City Rubber is still the world's largest manufacturer of balloons. So it's a great toy making history, but it's also our future here.
One of the key players in building up that toy-making history was a Russian immigrant, working at the Sun Rubber Company in Barberton, Ohio. He was one of the toy industry's great inventive geniuses.
His name was Dietrich Rempel, and he patented and created some of the most important ways of manufacturing toys from rubber. They called him DG, his initials, DG Rempel.
Dietrich Rempel lived on Hampshire Road in Fairlawn. He actually had a pipe organ in his house. And when I went to visit him, his wife was actually playing the pipe organ in the house on Hampshire Road. He was an artist by trade. He was a Russian, and he had a very hard time finding employment because people mistrusted Russians during the 1930s because of the spread of communism. He did work for Sun Rubber, and then because of a dispute of some sort, he went out on his own.
DG patented rotocast molding, blow molding, and basically the very first hollow-bodied rubber objects. He is the father of the rubber ducky, and he also patented the little squeaky that goes into all the little rubber toys.
Popular in the 1940s and 50s, it is still sought by toy collectors. And according to Dave, some toy manufacturers, like Little Tykes, are still using the rotocast process.
It's an injection of the polymer material, a rotating of the cast while the rubber is still warm so that it spreads evenly through the mold, and then out comes a molded vinyl product.
Rempel's creations were what Michael calls the Cadillac of rubber toys.
They're beautifully painted, and he had a story to go with each one, and he created them as characters. There wasn't just a rubber dog, this was a rubber puppy dog that had a personality and a character all to himself. All the other rubber toy companies started to do this too. And the city of Akron has developed a list of characters, children's characters, unique to the city. Kind of like Hollywood has cartoon characters, Akron had its own rubber toy characters.
In the 1930s, Walt Disney animated films and characters were extremely popular.
Well, the first company that I'm aware of that had the license to make Disney products was Cyberling Latex. And their first product was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Were hard rubber toys that were made for the Seal Test Milk Company. They also made hard rubber toys like Ferdinand the Bull from some of the Disney films. Later, Tom Smith, the president of Sun Rubber Company, got the Disney license, and he then made hard rubber toys for Disney, and then later vinyl toys, as vinyl came in as the preferred material to make toys. And so he made Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, Robin Hood, and a variety of Disney characters that continued right up until about 1960. The most interesting story about Disney, though, actually involves Dietrich Rempel when he was an employee of the Sun Rubber Company in Barberton, and it happened during World War II. The United States, during the Second World War, was concerned about an inland attack by the Japanese, and they would create an incendiary attack on some of our major manufacturing centers. So the idea that people would be equipped with gas masks was frightening, in the sense that children, seeing these masks on faces, would be terribly afraid. And so how would they ever get a child to wear such a gas mask? And so the War Department during World War II approached Tom Smith and the Disney Company, and Dietrich Rempel designed a gas mask for children in the form of a Mickey Mouse face, so that children would be not afraid to put it on, and it had a canister on it so that children could breathe charcoal filtered air.
Soon after World War II, Dietrich Rempel started his own business enterprise manufacturing, and it continued operating into the 1970s. Akron historian Dave Lieberth says his interest in the region's toy industry arose because of his family's connections.
Well, both my mother and father worked for the Cyberling Latex Company in the 1930s.
His dad also later worked for the Sun Rubber Company.
I realized that unlike a lot of families, we had a lot of toys in the house that I played with, my brother played with, and that were made by Cyberling Latex and Sun Rubber. And so as a young child and as an older child, I played with toys made by Sun Rubber and Rempel and Cyberling Latex.
But there was more history to discover about Akron's toy industry. In 1891, Sam Dyke had the largest toy company to operate in the United States during the 19th century. At that time, he gave his marble factory to his older brother, either for free or a very good price. But unfortunately, in 1904, 13 years after his company was incorporated, the American Marble and Toy Manufacturing Company burned to the ground.
The next morning, every little child in Akron was down at the marble factory site, stuffing their pockets full of marbles, until the policeman came down to try and chase them away, but that was a losing battle. So the mayor went to city council. They had the old factory site declared a public nuisance. You couldn't have children rummaging around the burnout remains of an old factory. And since there was disputes about who owed what, who owned the property, and who owned the marbles and toys that were spread out all over the acres down here, city council just ordered the site buried. And in the process, we believe they buried upwards of 10 million marbles and half as many of the little penny toys.
Penny toys were miniature replicas of things like jugs, boots, dogs, cats, that were made out of glazed stoneware. In 2001, they did an archaeological excavation at the old factory site at Lock 3.
We dug up many tens of thousands of marbles and penny toys. There are still millions of marbles buried out in the park.
One penny toy in particular stands out from the rest.
We also discovered a Santa Claus. One of the penny toys was Santa Claus. Here he is. But it turns out that he is the oldest three-dimensional image of a Santa Claus. When we first found him, we weren't really sure what he was, And there were some other people that were saying, it's a wizard or something. But we know now that he is the oldest three-dimensional image of a Santa Claus in existence. He's made and dressed in blue, and it's in the tradition of the old German Father Christmas, unlike the Santa Claus that we know and love today.
In the first half of the 19th century, many German immigrants came to Akron to work on building and operating the Ohio and Erie Canal. They brought their traditions with them, like that of a Santa Claus dressed in a long, blue cloak with a white beard. The gift-giving element came from the 4th century Greek bishop, Saint Nicholas, but the blue robe and white beard originated with the pre-Christian Germanic god named Odin, who is believed to have been the first influence of our image of Santa Claus.
Ho, ho, ho!
Our modern Santa, dressed in red, changed over time with influences like Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, along with the popular Coca-Cola Company Christmas advertising campaign of the 1930s.
We are very proud that he is still here, and he gets a lot of attention, especially it's Christmas time.
The blue Santa is called a wishing Santa.
He fits perfectly in the palm of your hand, and even better in a smaller hand. But the concept was that you'd hold on to him and you'd wish out loud what you wanted for Christmas. And then you'd give it to your little sister and she'd hold it and wish for her Christmas thing that she wanted Santa Claus to bring her. And it would go around the family to mom and dad, and everybody knew exactly what the little ones wanted for Christmas. This was before there were such things as mall Santas. And it gave the mothers an opportunity. It's like, wait until you get home and you can wish on it, on the Santa, for your present. It was a good way to, kind of diffuse the, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. And it's like, be a good girl, and you go home and wish on the Santa Claus, and we'll see what Santa Claus thinks.
Michael, with the help of his sister and friends, are still making replicas.
We made literally thousands.
In fact, she says they made 8,000 to 10,000 in one season alone.
You almost form an attachment to the Santa as you're working with them. When they're done, there is just this wonderful serene look, and of course their little hands are almost monkish. And what I love the absolute most is you can hold them in your hand, and they're almost like a giant worry bead.
And the more I learned about the history and how he had recreated this little guy from something he found was just so interesting, and how he came to life again through these molds and through these processes that were modern. I think it's great that something from the past is, and I think it would be even greater to know that they were all learn about its history as a part of the city, as a part of the culture, and the importance that it had even as far back as when this little figure came from Europe as part of the culture of Christmas time.
The wishing Santa is still used by kids today and is a reminder to all of us of the magic of Christmas. From Santa to marbles, Akron played a pivotal role in shaping some of the greatest joys of childhood. Mass manufacturing a toy as simple as a marble opened up a world of possibility for children, not only in the region, but around the world.
We'd be hard-pressed to identify a toy capital today. The manufacture of small items has been so distributed all over the world, throughout Asia, for example, that it would be difficult to pinpoint one city. But for the 20th century, from about 1930 to about 1960, there's no question that Akron, Ohio was the toy capital of the world.
These companies have continued in business. They provide at least 3,000 toy manufacturing jobs in the greater Akron area, possibly more. It represents, there's a future in toy manufacturing in the greater Akron area.
A future built on the strong foundation of the past, all beginning on this site at Lock 3 Park, where inventors thought of innovative ways to make toy making faster, more efficient, and more competitive, essentially giving birth to the world toy industry.
Before the factory opened in 1884, only the wealthiest families in the world could afford to buy toys for their children. But once the factory opened and they started mass producing toys, from that point forward, all children of the world could have toys. So to find Santa Claus, the oldest three-dimensional image of a Santa Claus, at the factory site, well, that's just proof positive. This is the site of the original North Pole.